Does this investment by Oracle potentially reassure you when it comes to some of the censorship issues, the suppression issues that you've raised in your report on TikTok?
Well, Heidi, based on the information we have at the moment about the Oracle deal, I can't say that I'm hugely reassured. Of course, when we look at this problem, there are two big national security issues. One is the privacy side of things, and the other side is censorship and the potential for TikTok to be used as a vector for information operations. Now, it's my view that in the media coverage that we've had so far about TikTok, the data privacy part of the equation has had a lot of attention. But the other very important part of the national security question here is to what extent can TikTok be used as a vector for misinformation from Beijing?
So we've seen WeChat long been in compliance with the wishes of Beijing, right? That's really largely uncontested. TikTok, though, say that they don't. So what are your findings that show this is really contrary to what you see?
Well, what we've found is that TikTok have adopted a policy as they've expanded around the world of trying to be apolitical. And what we discovered is that mainly after the murder of George Floyd in the United States and the activism that flourished after that with the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of that started to happen on TikTok. Now, that put TikTok in a position where it could no longer credibly continue to have this policy of being an apolitical platform. Now, what that means is that now there is a lot of political discussion happening on TikTok. And ByteDance, the company that owns and operates TikTok, is essentially under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP has enormous leverage over this company, and that means that it would be trivially easy for the CCP to force ByteDance to very subtly nudge up or promote content that would be preferential to one presidential candidate, for instance. It is a site where a lot of political discussion is happening, and that is very concerning when you consider that the CCP have this enormous leverage over the company.
How different is the content that they suppress from, say, other global tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, that are trying to curb misinformation?
Well, what we appear to be seeing on TikTok is that ByteDance have adopted a policy, certainly in countries like Vietnam and Russia, of almost censorship as a service. So TikTok will say that what they are doing is complying with local law. But in our view, what it appears that they're doing is over-complying with local law. So, for example, in Russia, hashtag Putin is a thief is shadow banned on TikTok, which means people can post using that hashtag, but it appears to all other people on the platform, including people all around the world, that post hasn't gone out. Similarly, hashtags related to LGBTQ plus related issues are also shadow banned in Russia. Now, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc., they don't over-comply with local law in that way. They don't completely block hashtags. They leave it up to the users, up to the Russian people, to decide if they want to exercise their free speech in that way.
And tell me a little bit about the privacy part of things that, we've been more focused on here. How does is that a factor that worries you as well, especially when TikTok comes out and says, no, that shouldn't be a worry because they're not storing the information in China, that it's in the US and Singapore, and that they actually don't share it with Beijing?
Well, I mean, TikTok may very well say that the information is not stored in Beijing, but that doesn't mean that it's not being accessed from Beijing. And in fact, TikTok themselves say that their goal is to minimize access to TikTok user data from Beijing, which is them admitting that that data can still be accessed from Beijing. And that is very worrying because there is essentially no firewall between the authorities in Beijing and that TikTok user data if it is being accessed from Beijing.
Fergus, should Australia and other Western nations or Western allies be taking a stronger stance against the use of TikTok within their jurisdictions? We know, obviously, the Australian government already has a pretty full plate when it comes to Canberra-Beijing tensions.
Yes, I think that governments like the Australian government, for example, can take a stronger stance on this issue, but they needn't do it in the same way that the Trump administration has done it. What the Trump administration has done is quite a blunt policy move. It's, in my view, it would be much better if governments like Australia ensured that all apps had more transparency around privacy, and also, importantly, that apps like like TikTok and WeChat and Facebook and Twitter and all social media apps be required to investigate any disinformation and information operations that may be taking place on their platforms. Because don't forget, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, in the past year have all investigated information operations on their platforms that they have said come from China. Now, it is highly likely that if Beijing have been conducting these information operations on those platforms, that they would do the same on TikTok, which, after all, is owned by a Chinese company.
Fergus, before we let you go, I just wanted to get your views on the Jinhua Data Leak, this database which has been compiling details on around 2.5 million people. What do you think is the intent here?
Well, this is just yet again another story that adds to a wider narrative of China having a voracious appetite for this type of information. And what it appears is happening is that there is sort of mosaic-like a picture that is being constructed inside China of other societies and people in them, influential people, that can then be leveraged for geopolitical goals.